We're going to talk about this as a thing. It happens. We re-stash our yarn. I've been doing it for the last 2 weeks, if not 10 years. So let's talk about the phenomena that is restashing today. Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 169 in the series. This is the no safety net episode because I have no notes. My little screw thing for the camera went away. The battery charger got unplugged. It's a wild day here, so we're just going to try to do this in one take and see how it goes. Yeah, it's lovely to see all of you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me in the yarn room. It is Saturday morning, and this episode is actually, aside from flying without a safety net, this episode is about restashing. You heard that right. And you've heard about destashing. You've heard a lot about destashing. You get rid of your yarn, give it away, sell it, get rid of it, get stashed down, all that stuff. We're going to talk about what really happens today, which is restashing. We all know we've done it, and we're going to talk about this as a thing. It happens. We restash our yarn. I've been doing it for the last 2 weeks, if not 10 years. So let's talk about the phenomena that is restashing. To do so, I have 2 baby sweaters. I have a sweater that I've swatched for Spencer, and yeah, we're going to talk about where that yarn came from. Yeah, it's great to see all of you. Thanks for coming back to the podcast. If you're coming back, and if you are new, welcome to the cast. It's usually a podcast about sweater knitting, basically. Like designing, modifying, all the kind of stuff you do with sweaters. So I do have lots and lots and lots of sweaters today, as usual. I don't actually have much else. I do have a little tiny segment on my new needle felting project, which I will show you at the end. But yeah, it's all sweater all the time. You can find me just about everywhere as Knitting the Stash, over on Ravelry, on YouTube, obviously. I have a little blog, a WordPress blog, and where else? Instagram, and of course on knittingthestash.com, which is my main website. That is where you can find all the classes, all the links, all the yarn shop. And if you were a member of the newsletter, you got a code last week to get into the specials and sales portion of the website. There's some pretty deeply discounted yarn over there. A bunch of you took advantage of the class, my online classes. I put up some of those up at a discount. So if you are part of the newsletter and you haven't taken advantage of that, go forth and do it. Today is Small Business Saturday, but as promised, this sale isn't meant to be like a pressure-y thing. It's just kind of an end of the year, help me clean out the store, the Flock Farm Yarn Shop. So I'm actually going to extend that sale to Monday. So if you are catching the podcast this weekend and you're a newsletter subscriber and you got the little code to get into the special area and you just haven't gone over there yet, go forth. Have fun, see what you find over there. Thanks for signing up for classes. For those of you who did, I'm really excited to see new people in the classes. And if you need any help with the classes, anything like that, knittingthestash@gmail.com. Just get in touch with me. I'm happy to help. But yeah, I have classes over there on sweater modification, beginning sweater modification, creative sweater modification, cloning sweaters in your closets, all kinds of really fun, interesting classes. So those are at a discount for the newsletter subscribers. If you're not a newsletter subscriber, sign up so you're there for the next deals. Just go over to knittingthestash.com and I'll put the thing on the screen here, and you can sign up over there to get on the newsletter list. Yeah, so that's what's happening. Sale extended until Monday. It's leisurely. We're having fun here. So let's jump right into the knitting. The knitting has been very fun because it's miniature. It's mini knitting. And these are baby sweaters. We have a new grandbaby on the way. So I was knitting up a couple of different baby sweaters, which I will talk about in some detail. One is the Melange baby sweater by Petite Knit. Thanks to Alina Jordan, my good buddy. Back in the Midwest. We talk still on Facebook and talk on the phone sometimes. Thanks to Alina, I got a line on this pattern, the Melange baby sweater. So that one was a really fun one to knit. And then I also did Tin Can Knits Flax sock. They have like 3 different versions. This is the very lightweight one. So we're going to talk about those sweaters. But the deal is, I've been restashing. And I want to shine some light on the restashing because I feel like we have a lot of emotion, I think, around our stashes. And a lot of times we feel like we need to destash. I have a destash page. I have a personal destash page. You all know about it. You love it. You go over there and you shop from it. It's fun. You can see what kind of yarn I have. A lot of it is really beautiful stuff that I haven't had time to knit with, and it's time to like pass it on to a new home. So we're kind of like emotionally attached to our stash. A lot of times we think of it as a collection. Some people even talk about yarn collecting as a separate hobby from knitting or crocheting or weaving or whatever it is that you're doing with the yarn. And I have some of that. I have skeins in there that I will just never part with because they came from a particular dyer. They are associated with a particular theme. I bought them at a particular place. Like we all have those little treasure troves in our stashes. We also have tons of yarn probably that we bought for a project and then something else caught our eye and we didn't get back to it and we never got back to it and it's been 10 years. So that's the kind of stuff that we often destash. So as you all know, I've been destashing quite a bit, but in destashing, I've also been confronted with like going through my yarn. So I'll look through the yarn, I'll be like, it goes in this pile, it goes in this pile. You know, you ask yourself, does it bring me joy? Or whatever it is, however it is that you do your yarn destashing, you know, your categorization. And by looking at the yarn again, you refamiliarize yourself with it, right? You're like, oh yeah, there was that beautiful Rama yarn that I was gonna knit a sweater for Spencer out of 5 years ago, but I haven't done it, and I already sold off some of the, or destashed some of the color work that was gonna go with the sweater, so now I don't have enough yarn to knit him a sweater, but it's like, what am I gonna do with it, right? So you refamiliarize yourself with your yarn. And you put it in the tub and you take the photos and you put them up online and you sell them on, you know, a big website here or a big website there, or you have your own destash, but whatever it is. But then there's this creeping kind of like, you've thought about that particular yarn a lot because you took photos of it and you went back and looked at it to see if it was discontinued or still available, and could you get more of it, could you get less of it, how much does it cost, like all those things, right? So you're very familiar with the yarn that's in your destash, maybe more familiar than with the yarn that's in your stash proper. So you start thinking about it. I actually woke up the other day, as a kind of, that maybe is overstating. I was laying there kind of in a half dreamy state at like 4 in the morning, and I just started imagining, again, as usual, all the things I could do with the yarn I was potentially destashing. See, that's the thing. You all are very quick. When I put destash yarn up, you snap it up. And there is some yarn up there that there was one recent destash that I was a little bit like, ooh, that hurt. Like I didn't think that one would go. And maybe I should have, you know? And so then you really get attached to the destash yarn. So it's like, but only one. There was only one. So normally when I destash, I'm like, yay, it's so good to see it go. It feels good. It's like a little weight is lifted, like that thing that I was curating and it was so precious. I've kind of like sent it on its way and I know someone else will appreciate it. You know, this is part of the make along, by the way, that we're doing from November to March, is like taking the things that are precious to us and either knitting with them or finding a new home for them. So this is all part of the same thing. So I had that moment where I was thinking about all the destash yarns and what I could do with them. And I started restashing over and over and over again. And by restashing, I mean, I went to my destash and like started shopping from my own destash. And then when I shopped from it, sometimes I would make something out of it specific. Sometimes I would just decide that yarn was just, I couldn't actually part with it. So I had some yarn that was for Tink's sweater, for example, her sweater leftovers. And I saw it in my destash as I was sorting through stuff. And I thought, oh no, I actually had to repair that sweater about a year ago. And what if I needed to repair it again and I needed a little bit of that yarn? Now, instead of just taking like a small ball of each color and just saving that, I like took the whole thing and put it back in my stash. I restashed that yarn. So there are better ways perhaps to restash than what I did. I also found some, the rainbow yarn that was the leftovers from my little granddaughter's sweater. And that was on the destash page, but I ended up using one of the colors for my sleeve accents on this little sweater. And so I was like, ooh, you know, I don't have a lot of superwash yarn. This was Knit Picks Swish DK, I think, superwash yarn. And I've gotten rid of almost, I maybe have a bin of superwash yarn left that's like sock yarn, you know, so not always great for sweater knitting in like single skeins. Anyway, so I don't have a lot of superwash yarn left in terms of like grand baby sweaters. So I was like, ooh, I might need some more of that sometime. Like, what if I needed this accent color and I didn't have it? So that yarn got re-stashed too. Then there was Spencer's sweater. Remember the one I was just mentioning? Like, I got this Ralma yarn to knit him a beautiful kind of Norwegian colorwork sweater. I think it had 2 or 3 different contrast colors in the yoke. Well, in my destashing, I sold the other contrast colors. So I was down to like 13 balls or something like that. Not enough for a men's sweater. And it was sitting there and it's beautiful. And Spencer and I just got to talking last week. And he was like, he's wearing his sweater that he loves, the Northlander by Petite. And he was like, you know, maybe, I was like, maybe you need another one. Just a second sweater so that if that one ever got ripped or dirty or something, you could pull the other one out. Just a simple, same kind of sweater. So he was like, yeah, I'd love it in blue. And I was like, well, I have almost enough blue yarn to knit you the blue sweater. But anyway, so this yarn got pulled from the stash and I was actually only, this is the irony of the story. I was only about 3 balls short, 3 skein balls short of the sweater quantity I needed for him. So I just found somebody who had 3 more balls of this yarn. So now I have a sweater quantity for him. So I don't know. I want to know what you think about the restashing, because in a way it's like doing its job. Your yarn, your stash is getting used. Right? I mean, like, that is what we all dream of. Is like, aside from those beautiful little curated collectible skeins, we all dream that the yarn in our stash will like magically be like paired with a project and sent off into the, like, knit up, sent out into the world. You're like, yay, this is the goal. The goal is to like use the yarn or part with it. And so restashing might have a little bit of like shame attached to it. It might have a little bit of like guilt. It might have a little bit of like, I love that yarn, I need to keep it attached to it. But it's also pretty practical, right? You get to know that yarn again. Like I said, you've taken the photos, you've looked it all up, you've thought about it. You've seen it in a beautiful new light because you were like, oh, photographing it, you know? And then you're like having a conversation with someone who's like, I'd like a blue sweater. And you're like, I can do that because I remember I have all this blue yarn for you. Anyway, I'd like to know what you all think about the restashing. I think there are different ways to restash. I think some of it is this kind of fear-based, like, oh, I feel if that actually sold, if somebody took that, I would be sad. But some of it's like practical. It's like, well, this was up on the Destash page for quite a while. Nobody wanted it. And he wanted a blue sweater. So look at that. This is fate. This is meant to be. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. What do you think? Do y'all restash? Is it a thing? Is this like the Elizabeth Zimmerman, like, I'm unventing a word that we've all been using anyway, restashing. Love to know what you think about it, whether you do it, how you do it, and if you think is there a hierarchy of restashing? Is there the restashing to use it versus restashing to like keep it? How do we feel about that? I'd love to know. But I have all restash projects today, so that's what I'm going to talk to you about. And let's start with Spencer's sweater, just because I have this. I've been winging this little ball of yarn around. So this is the Ralma Strickagarden 3. It's like a 3-ply jumper weight. I think it's a DK, if I remember right. Yes, it has to be a DK because that was the whole kind of a thing for the patterns that I was looking for. It is what is this yarn? It is a color 147. So it's like a I think on the website, some websites call it like a farmer blue, which is an interesting, I feel like that's an Americanism of a Norwegian yarn or something. Anyway, this is about 100 meters for 50 grams. And that matters because a lot of the patterns I was looking up, I was trying to figure out how to find a yarn that was 50 grams for 100 meters because that mattered to what I had and how I was going to be able to knit it. This is the swatch. Some of you might think that's a little bit of a loose gauge. And it kind of is. But this is Spencer I'm knitting for, and he gets really hot, and he loves his wool sweaters, but they need to be a little bit lighter and a little looser. This is I don't know that it's a woolen spun yarn, but it feels very lightweight. And it is for the Erik Sweater. Now the Erik Sweater is a free pattern. I'm showing you here. If this doesn't work, I'll put a picture in. I'll just insert a picture. But the Erik Sweater is, I think you'll be able to see it. You can see back here, it has these really great shoulder kind of epaulettes, like a saddle shoulder, which I think looks really good on Spencer. We were talking the other day about, he has a couple raglan sweaters and he has a couple, I always go this way with raglan, that's not true. Is that right? Wait, I always get my raglans like so confused. Raglans go this way. Yes. I'm always like 180 degrees wrong on everything. Directions, spatially. It's amazing I can knit anything at all that has 3 dimensions because I'm always just like, and Spencer's just like, no, it's this way. Anyway, so we were talking the other day about raglan versus kind of like set-in sleeve looking sweaters versus saddle shoulders, like all the different stuff. I think he looks particularly good with like the saddle shoulder. And I've knit a couple sweaters for him like that now, and I really just like the fit on him. I've also done the raglan for him as well. It's fine. I think raglans can work. We've talked about raglans on here before. They can work for a number of people, even adults, but they're a little bit tricky, and they don't always look the best. Like one of the cool things about this sweater, just like the Northland that I knit for him, it has this saddle shoulder that goes into a like this modified shoulder seam that looks set in, which I think just looks really kind of flattering. So anyway, this is the Erik Sweater. It is by Hanne Pjedsted. It's I think it's either, is it Danish or is it, I feel like it's Danish, but I'm not positive. A Danish design, yeah, DK. Danish designer, for free. This is the English translation. I'm not sure yet how good the English translation is, and I don't expect it to be perfect. It's a free pattern. You know, there's only so much to be expected from free patterns, just because, you know, if the designer's not getting remuneration for the work that they're doing, you can't expect them to just like put more and more work into it. So I'm looking forward to like digging in here and having some fun and making sure that I make it work the right way. But it's kind of, I think it's described on the website as more of a recipe, and I think that's fair. So this is the way the saddle shoulders work. I feel like I can show you this because it's a free pattern. And yeah, it should be really fun to check this out. I've got to check out the designer. I want to do the whole thing. But this is the sweater that I'm going to knit for Spencer out of restashed yarn. And I think he's pretty excited about it. So we'll see how that goes. The other sweaters I've been working on, I've been gesturing toward these baby sweaters all over the place. So this is, as I mentioned, this is the Melange Sweater by Petite Knit. And I've knit a couple of Petite Knit's patterns at this point. Twice over, I've done the Northland sweater for both Spencer and Phineas. I feel like I knit another Petite Knit sweater for me, and I just can't even remember at this point. If I did, I'll try to put the name down on the screen. But this is the Melange baby sweater, and it's the Melange because I think in the pattern you're supposed to hold 2 yarns together, so you kind of create this marled melange kind of effect. I just used a fingering weight yarn that is a variegated yarn, and I actually held it double, so that's why it's this thick. You can see that it's, you know, a pretty substantial sweater. So this is a fingering weight yarn held double, and this is the entire skein. You can see this is all 400 yards, 400 plus yards, whatever it was, of that fingering weight skein. This is a Pale Moon. I don't know if Pale Moon Yarns is still around. I think they might be, but this is a Pale Moon yarn, sock yarn, superwash with a little nylon in it. I used this to knit a pair of socks for my sister-in-law that I love. They came out really beautifully. And again, total Destash yarn. Like it was in the Destash bucket. It's got photographed. It was up on the knittingthestash.com website under personal Destash. And I saw it as I was sorting through, and I was like, I need a superwash yarn for a baby sweater. Well, there you go. So I pulled it out of the stash and I didn't quite restash it, I guess. I used it, and that's not quite restashing. It's been used, but it was pulled from the Destash. And I like this sweater is really adorable. I like I said, Alina Jordan, my buddy out in the Midwest, turned me onto this sweater. She had just knit one, I think in a wool yarn. It was adorable. It's supposed to have long sleeves. Obviously, I ran out of yarn. Maybe that's not obvious. this was going to be for the new baby. And I was talking to my buddies on the Saturday Zoom, and they were like, well, if the baby's due this kind of the end of this winter, you might want to think about knitting a sweater for like the next winter. So what size would that be? So I knit something in the 9 to 12 month size. These are all the things knitters think about. You know this. You know you've thought about this. And so this is the 9 to 12 month size, which is basically a year. I mean, it's like a year old kid. So you can see that's why it's a little bit bigger. And that's why I ran out of yarn. So it's no fault of the pattern. The pattern is very good about like saying how much yarn you need. I just used one single skein of yarn from my Destash and ran out of yarn. But the way that I saved this, like I said, was to go back to the pile of rainbow yarn that I had from my granddaughter's sweater. And yeah, I think it's like the perfect shade. I couldn't quite believe it because I had all these different blues, you know. I was like, which blue is it going to be? Do I have to open a whole new skein of yarn? Like, how's this going to work? It's got to like be superwash. So I was like, oh, it's got to be like a DK or a double fingering. I was just panicking, you know, because you get to the point where you've knit a whole sweater and you're like, I don't have enough yarn. What do I do? So the solution was this Swish DK from Knit Picks in... no idea what color it is. It's in my bag. It's probably up on the project page if you really need to know. But it's a DK weight yarn, so it's not held double, because this was a fingering weight that I held double to make it a double knitting yarn, DK weight. So this is an actual DK weight yarn, which was great because it sits just, you know, it's the same stitch size and everything else, even down here where I've just held it single to finish off the bottom of the sweater that I needed some extra length on. Yeah, and I like it. It's superwash. It actually picks up kind of perfectly on some of the blues that are in the sweater. Just like that's the way you do it when you're trying to go for another color. And I made this into a short sleeve sweater. Because of that, I only had one little half a skein of this blue. And so I did the bottom first. This was like yarn conservation 101. I did the bottom first to figure out if I had enough length. And I decided I had enough of the yarn to do the extra little length here at the bottom to make it a little longer and to give it the ribbing. I wanted to keep the ribbing at about the same size. So it's about 3/4 of an inch or an inch, you know, for each one. So I did the bottom first, and then I did the collar because the collar is folded over, and I wanted to see if I had enough yarn to fold it over. And I did. And then I got to do the sleeves, and I was like, there's no way I have enough yarn to do full sleeves. And in the end, I ended up with like a ball of yarn that was like this big. So yeah, so this was a good choice to make it a little short sleeve sweater. And I figured, you know, this is for like a 1-year-old. If you just need a little layer, if it's cold outside or something, this is going to be easier for the kids to run around in anyway, because then they have the freedom of movement with their arms. And, you know, there's wonderful things about short sleeve or vesty kind of things for young kids. I was also wondering about this head opening. I did all my checks on my like size charts that I have. I have a bunch of different size charts because I've been doing some tech editing, and it's supposed to work for a 1-year-old head. It's supposed to. I was wondering because you end up finishing this sweater not just by whip stitching the collar down. You don't just fold it over and whip stitch it. So it's a little bit more of a it doesn't have as much give to it in the way that you finish this. So we'll have to see. If it doesn't end up fitting over the kids' heads, it looks pretty big though. I'm thinking it's gonna be okay. If it doesn't, then I can just always pop off the finishing work here, and I don't want to give it away because it's part of the pattern. But I could pop off the finishing work and just do something that's a little bit more stretchy, because the collar itself is very stretchy. It's just once you do the finishing work, it kind of like cinches it up a little. Which is good because, you know, for a kid's sweater, you don't want it just falling off their shoulders or whatever. So, yeah. So it looks proportional. According to my size charts, it's supposed to work. So that's it. This is my destashed, restashed sweater, number 1. Or 2. Now we're on to Spencer. Anyway, the second of 3 destash, restash sweaters. I think it came out pretty nicely. I like the way that the shaping works around the collar. Petite knit, if you've not knit one of her patterns before, I would really recommend them. She does a nice job of, you know, the finishing, the detail work. It's just a really, you can see here's the inside. It's really beautiful the way that these sweaters come together, how they're constructed. You know, they're kind of, I think of them as like meant to last. They're very classic. They're very simple. So that's number 1. obviously way too big for a newborn baby, which is going to be born sometime in the late winter, early spring. So I decided to go back to the drawing board and try to knit something that was a little smaller and more of like a 0 to 3 month or 3 to 6 months kind of size. And that's when I stumbled upon the Flax sock from Tin Can Knits. If you're not familiar with Flax, a bunch of people in my Saturday Zoom group have knit it, which is wonderful. So, I could pick their brains about it. There are 3 different versions. There's the Flax kind of worsted version, which I think is the original. There's a Flax DK version, which is the one I was considering for Spencer's sweater with the DK weight Rama yarn. And then there's the Flax sock, which is for fingering weight yarn. Perfect. It's so nice of them to put out these free patterns in all these different weights. Perfectly simple, great sweater. I think it, if you haven't knit it or if you haven't knit sweaters and you're interested in knitting a sweater and you want like a free pattern, this one was really good. I was very impressed for a free pattern. It had tons of different sizes, size inclusive all the way. This is Tin Can Knits, all the way from like baby to like adult, like unisex men, women, all the good stuff. So I knit this one in the Flax sock version, the lightest yarn, lightest weight, thinnest yarn version. This is I knit the 0 to 3 month size. It looks a little bit big, maybe. I didn't do the measurements to see because it's a baby. It's like if it doesn't fit them when they're born, it'll fit them for like the 1 week when they're like 3 months old. Anyway, it's a really simple design, raglan design. It has this nice detailing on the sleeves. I'll try to put my like little arm in there so you can see it. So all the versions, adult to baby, have this garter kind of ridge or patch going down the sleeves. I blocked it so that so that it actually sits half and half, so you can actually see it on both sides, because that's kind of how I figured it would be worn. Modifications on this one were very few. This, I think I chose to go ahead and knit the ribbing collar immediately after the cast on I didn't put it on later. That's one of the choices. It works fine because, you don't need a lot of extra structure and stability if you're knitting for like small people. If I were knitting it for myself, I would wait to put the collar and add it later. It would add some structure and stability around the neck so that when the sweaters hang from certain points, right? They hang from your shoulders and they hang from the neckline. And if you just pick up stitches cast on stitches and then just knit immediately into the ribbing, sometimes what you'll find is that the sweater will relax over time and just kind of, out. Whereas if you wait until the end and then go back and pick up stitches from your cast on, assuming that you have this option, if you pick up stitches from your cast on, which is, going to be obviously lower than your, if you're casting on stitches up here, then you kind of don't have as much of a choice. If you're casting on stitches down here, you have more choice. If you pick up those stitches later, and it's a certain kind of yarn that's going to be hanging and draping or a really heavy sweater or all the different things, considerations, then by doing that, you've created a little bit more of a stability point for the sweater to hang off of, just like with the shoulders. Some shoulders, like this guy, this is a different construction, but you end up with a seam up here on the back of the shoulders, which is, this creates stability, right? Same with like a 3-needle bind off, or, there are other ways to create stability up in those areas, and that's kind of what you want. But with a little baby sweater, you don't have to worry about that so much. So I didn't bother. I just cast on and then put on the ribbing. And I didn't work and this is all in the pattern too. They talk about these things. That's one of the other reasons that the pattern is great, is it teaches you, if you've never knit a sweater before, it teaches you a lot about what you want to consider, whether or not you'd want to add stability to your sweater in these kinds of ways. The other thing that the pattern will teach you is like, do you need short rows? With this sweater, since it's for a baby, they were like, don't bother. This way, whoever's putting on the clothes can just kind of put it on either way, which is true. It's completely the same on both sides. For the adult versions, you would add short rows in the back so that, you're lifting up the yoke so that it would sit a little more like that in the end, so that your back neck is higher than your front neck, so that way you're not choking yourself out, right? If you've ever had a shirt or a sweater where you're just sitting there and you're just constantly like, oh my God, like why is this thing up here so high? It's because it wasn't designed well enough to accommodate the fact that your back shoulders are higher than your clavicle, like your neck bone here. But baby sweater, no short rows, totally reversible. And I just followed the pattern pretty much. Like I said, I don't know about gauge, or I don't know about gauge. I don't think I checked gauge. I don't think I did anything because I figured it's going to be big enough for like the smaller babies. And then whatever after that. One change I did make, the pattern calls for using size 5 for the main body and then size 2 for the ribbing. I did size 2 up here for the ribbing. But I did size 5 for the main sweater. But on the hem down here, I went down just to the size 4 because I didn't want this to be too constrictive and like squeeze in. Some people like that for babies, some people don't. You know, if you have a little more ribbing for the little kids, it can keep the sweater from riding up. I just couldn't bring myself to put this down to like a US 2 needle. It just seemed too small. I did do a US 2 needle for the sleeves though, because I just felt like that'll keep the sleeves down. At least, you know, if a little kid is kind of squirming around, that's more likely to be a point where like it's riding up the arm all the time. So yeah, and this was also Destash to restash yarn. So this was a unicorn. It was a knit crate yarn. That I got a long time ago. It's beautiful. It's like a superwash with some little tweedy neps in it, which I thought was just really cute. And yeah, it was just a skein of yarn that was just kind of sitting there waiting to be destashed, and I just snapped it up and put it in a sweater. So it was meant to be destash yarn that got used. So hooray, hurrah. More yarn got used. I think I used one skein here. Well, it wasn't quite one. It was like half a skein, one skein, used up this remainder. Now I'm using up all of Spencer's, this extra yarn. So I feel pretty good about the stash at this point, the destash and the stash. You know, I'm going through yarn. I'm finding ways to use those single skeins that you're kind of like, what am I going to do with them? If you have gift knitting to do, you know, there's something about keeping around some of those superwash skeins that you might think to yourself, well, I don't really knit with that or I don't wear it myself anymore, you know. But if you are gift knitting or giving other people knits, that superwash can be kind of really useful because they, you know, especially with like little kids, these are easy peasy. Just throw them in the wash and lay them out and they'll be fine. So there you go. Yeah. So restashing. Now, for those of you who have been following along with the needle felting, I'll give you a little update here. My conure is almost finished. I feel like I should bring the conure over. Hang on a second. So I can't remember what stage I showed you the conure in, but this is the sun conure and she's almost finished at this point. I have put on the last set of winged things here. I just need to I'm waiting for my reverse felting needle so that I can scrunch this up a little bit and kind of like blur that line between the green and the yellow on the back. And then I'll put more of the kind of furry, feathery hair, yellow, to go kind of cover over most of this anyway. So she's almost done. Yay! Everybody keeps saying I need to like find a way to clip her to my shoulders, and I think I kind of do. I think that would be adorable if I could find a way to just be like, maybe the next podcast, once I get my little reverse felting needle. For those of you who are interested, these are all separately felted. So the tail feathers are all separately felted. These wing feathers were felted. Then I felted these, then put on the final kind of big wing thing. The idea is to make it, you know, so you want to build this up so that it looks like she has actual wings sitting there at rest. So yeah, I think it's coming out pretty good. I'm excited about it. I want to finish it. I would like to finish it at this point. It's been many moons of work on the sun conure. So she's almost done. And then that, of course, inspired me to get a new project going. And I'm working on the bear. This is another woolen wagon. It's not a kit. It's a, what do you call it? Like a PDF instructional kind of thing. So I went to my stash of fiber to get all my stuff and my stash of wire and all that stuff. I didn't buy the kit, but I bought the PDF directions of how to make it. Or tutorial, maybe that's what it is. So this is going to be a bear, and I'm pretty happy about the way that the armature has worked out so far. I like Megan Ned's, the Woolen Wagons tutorials because she does a great job of giving you actual measurements for the armatures and, you know, helping you kind of see how it should look depending on, you know, how it is you want to pose the bear in the end. But that's the bear. So soon there will be a bear. I kind of like him like this. I like the armature stage. This is the other thing I do. For those of you who are new, I've taken up needle felting not that long ago and kind of gotten obsessed with it. I did a dragon and a Highland cow and now a sun conure, and then we're going on to a bear. So I was doing 2D needle felting a lot. I've stopped. I haven't done as much 2D needle felting lately because I really am enjoying the kind of 3D sculptural stuff. So we'll just see where it all goes. Yeah, that's what I do with my other free time. When I'm not knitting baby sweaters and destashing. So, I feel cleansed. This was like a very good, I needed to come up here and talk to you all about the restashing because that was just, it was weighing on me. So number one, I'd love to hear your comments about restashing and destashing. What are you all doing? You know, tell me I'm not alone. Number two, check out the personal destash. If you are looking for something, you never know when I'm going to take it down. You never know when the destash is going to get restashed. So if you see something you like, go ahead and go for it. Like I said, almost all the time, I'm very happy to see that yarn go to a new home. I don't get pangs of like sadness for the most part. I love seeing yarn get used. It makes me really, really happy to see things get used. Same with like finished knits. I love seeing sweaters get worn. I like seeing Spencer outside wearing his sweaters. So go to the destash. If you need something, find something, take it home and use it and love it. And then the last thing is if you are one of the newsletter people who got the special code for the specials and sales page, I'm extending it until Monday. So if a bunch of you went over in there and already shopped already, but there's still plenty of yarn. I even put some Shorn 5 up there, the gray skeins at a little bit of a discount. So yeah, go over to the specials and sales. Feel free to shop over there if you want to. And if you lost your newsletter code, just send me an email at knittingthestash@gmail.com and I will refresh your little code that you need to get into the special place. Yeah, but that's help me clear the shelves for the new year so I can put some new yarn up there. I'd appreciate it. And I think that's about it for this weekend. So I'm gonna go work on my bear and Spencer's sweater, which is finally swatched, so now I can actually cast it on. I hope wherever you are having some fun knitting or crafting this weekend, and I will see you in the next couple weeks. Take care. Bye.